Hello, my name's Tom. Welcome to my backyard. It's been a couple weeks since our last video, and I wanted to give an update on how the garden is doing. So we had a long period of cold weather. When I mean cold weather, I'm talking down in the teens, which is pretty unusual for this area. Now, if you remember, I'd put in some onions last time, and typically they're okay down to about 20 degrees. But like I said, we got down in the teens, so I was a little worried about them. They came through, I think, pretty well though. Now, after that cold snap, we had a lot of rain, so you may notice that some of these onions are kind of leaning. I think that's partly due to the fact that they had some erosion around the base of them from all that rain. But you can see we're getting some sun now. I think it got down to about 39 last night. We've had some weather in the 60s, and you can see these onions are greening right back up. So they've done really quite well for the weather. They were looking a little sad initially, but they've perked right back up. Now these leaves in here, these leaves are leaves that I brought in. We don't have any deciduous trees that drop their leaves. We have a live oak, but they don't drop all at once. They drop in stages. So my folks have a red oak in their yard, so we raked some leaves over there and brought them in and put them down as a way of trying to protect the onion sets here. And I don't know if they helped or not. They were piled up more. I've since walked in the garden a little bit and pressed them down, but I did pile those up around the onion sets. And I left some without the leaves and some with, just to see if some did better than the others, and there seems to be no difference. So I'm very happy with the way things are waking back up after all that cold weather. I also put in some onions that I started from seed in December. Actually, these may have been beginning of January, but they are really quite small, and so I imagine that these won't be ready to harvest until probably June or July, so much later than these onion sets that I brought in. And that'll be just kind of a fun little experiment. I'd heard about starting onions from seed before, but hadn't tried it. And everything I read said to start them in December. And so I believe that's when I started these, was December. But I didn't think to check what zone that was for. And so that was actually for folks in much northern latitudes. So after I did a little more research, after I started the seeds, I found out typically you start them here in Texas in October. So I'm about 2 months behind, which means I'll harvest 2 months later. So sometime around July. I don't know if we'll actually get any onions before they bolt, but it'll be a fun little experiment. And I've got them tucked down here at the very end of the garden. And this part of the garden actually gets probably the most shade from the tree. And so maybe that'll help prevent them bolting. But you can see they're really quite small still. But they look quite healthy. And they're next to my little experiment I've got. I don't have a compost pile, but I was curious as to how long it would take for a bunch of kind of garden cuttings and clippings to rot down themselves. So that pile's been sitting there about 2 months already. And we'll just leave it there until July and see if it rots down in that time. And if not, I'll just take it out then. Now, I wanted to show what I've done in the garden as well. So after the freeze, my collards and cabbages were looking kind of rough. And some things didn't make it through at all. So all of my cilantro died. It all went away. You can see these collards and cabbages are really coming back now with all this sunshine. So what I did is I went through and I clipped off all the yellowing and kind of dead looking leaves after the freeze. Now they weren't all dead per se, but some of them were really very, soft or limp, and they had some yellowing on them. Now here's a good example right here. Here's some that have some yellowing on the edge of them right here. Now a lot of them, they were yellow, but they'd kind of lost their structural integrity. So they'd lost their structural integrity in the sense that they were not, see, this leaf is nice and nice and firm, but a lot of them had kind of sagged, and the frost had really taken a toll on them. And so what I did is I went through and I cut all those off on the bottom of all these collards here. And mostly what I found it was the leaves that were touching the ground. And so what I've done is I cut all those that were yellowed and touching the ground, and it allowed a lot more airflow to come through here. And it also allowed the sun to touch that black soil that we have and warm that soil up, which I think these collards are really liked. Cabbages came through pretty well. What I actually found is that the cabbages froze solid. Some of them did, the heads did. And so I picked most of them. Now, there were a couple that I left. So I left this one here. That head is still really soft, so not ready to be picked yet. So I left it. And also over here, kind of my favorite cabbage that I'm hoping to save for seed. It came through all right. It has some yellow and browning on the leaves. This is a good example of what I mean when I say they turn yellow and lost their structural integrity. See how soft that leaf is? And it's just never really come back. But I left it because I'm hoping to still get this to go to seed. Now you can see right here there's some frost on it, and that head is nice and firm. So hopefully it came through okay. The things that did not come through okay were cilantro. The cilantro just completely died. And a lot of the arugula actually didn't come through very well, and so I cut a lot of it up. But this row right here did just fine. And so I cut that back a little bit, but you can see it's really come up now. We've kind of eaten our fill of arugula, so I'm letting it go to seed. And you can see it's bolted. And so there's a little seed pod coming up. And so we'll collect those seeds and use those next season. It's my daughter giggling over there. I want to show off my favorite collard plant over here. I showed it last time. It's the ones that I'm hoping will go to seed. We've got this one here and this one right here. And they really came through, I mean, incredibly good. They did a good job coming through that cold. Totally unbothered by it. And just beautiful. And actually probably ready to cut a couple more leaves off this. But the collards are extremely impressive in how they handled the cold weather and how they've come through it. I mean, you can see even this morning they got a little bit of a frost to them. I don't know if you can see that there, but I mean, their leaves are nice and firm again, and they really came through well. Now this over here, if I can work my way out of the garden, we've got a cabbage that's ready to pick here. I don't know if I'm going to pick it or let it go a little longer, but I mean, it's a nice, big, firm head, you can see. And again, these are early Jersey Wakefield. But this came through wonderfully. This is growing, I should mention, just in one of these, cinder block spaces. So I think that's only something like 7 inches. You can see it's a space smaller than my hand, but it's growing in that. And that was kind of an experiment to see if it would grow in that small of a space, and it is, which I think is quite impressive. This is our sage. The sage came through okay. I haven't trimmed it back. I've kind of left it alone just to see what it does. But I thought for sure that cold would kill that sage. And this is our lemon balm. And the lemon balm is done okay. It's died back, but you see it's got some green growth there. So I think it's going to be with us for a second season. We'll come over here real quick and we'll check out. Got another cabbage right here. This head is still soft and not tight. So hopefully with this warmer temperatures and sunshine, this cabbage will start to really fill its head out. Here's a perfect example. Here's one I missed. These yellowing leaves and soft leaves. That's what all I took off. So I'll break that off and toss that away. And you can see I really removed a lot right here in this section. And this was all mostly cabbages, some collards. And if the cabbages, if I pulled the head, I cut them out instead of leaving them. I did leave some after cutting them out just to see what they would do. And some of them, if I cut them high enough, have grown back a little bit. they're not making a head on them, but they grow all these little small outer leaves. And so it just keeps something growing in the soil, you know, putting sugars back in the soil. Supposedly, I don't really fully understand that, but I've heard that plants are putting sugars back into the soil and, you know, keep it covered, keep it growing. It's just better to have it growing than nothing in it. And so I try that in a couple places. And then over here, we got a purple cabbage. And this thing has not really done much anything, but I've noticed over the past couple days, it is finally starting to build a little bit of a head to it. And so maybe we will be able to actually get some purple cabbage this year. Just one, I guess. But yeah, that's been interesting. I put it in pretty late last year. I want to say I transplanted it in November, maybe the very end of October. I forget when exactly. But it didn't really turn into anything. And mind you, we get a lot of shade right here. So even though it's Texas and cabbages are kind of a winter crop, we get a lot of shade. And so I think it was not limited by the temperatures, but by the amount of sunlight. So we're getting more sunlight now, and so it's starting to grow again. I'm pretty happy with the lack of weeds. There's some weeds, but not a lot. Fewer in the garden than I have in my yard, honestly. And so I'm very happy with that. And I'll show you lastly, this is our oregano. Now this oregano we planted in this pot and largely died off, you can see, but there's a little bit living right here. And so now that it's warming up, this is greened back up again. And so I'll come in here and I will cut off all this dead stuff and leave just the living vine and see if it'll grow back from that. So let's go inside and take a look at our seeds. We've got some seed starts, and I'll show you a change I made to the seed starting station. Okay, here we are at the seed starting station. You can see I've started some tomatoes here, and we have some that are starting to come up. So we got a Valencia there, a couple Cherokee Purple, some San Marzano, and we even have a nasturtium that is starting to poke up through here. You can see that. Everything is very close because it's tight quarters in here. This is kind of my herb and pepper tray. So we got some catnip coming up, some lemon balm. The peppers have not come up yet, but lemon balm and thyme have come up. And that thyme is, I want to say it's called Orangelo thyme, but it apparently has kind of a citrus scent to it. And then down here, I started some yesterday. So I'm trying to stagger things, and these are different flowers. This is a tray largely of flowers and some basil, and then here's some more tomatoes that I started as well. But the change that I made, if I can back out of here, is I got this black kind of plastic, landscape plastic, and I've draped it over the top. And what I do is when I close everything up at night, I fold that top down. And what it does is it traps a lot of heat in here. And I have noticed when I open up this little station here, you can feel the heat actually flow out of here. So black plastic drapes down behind it. I've got now 6 total heat mats going in here that get up to 75 degrees Fahrenheit, plus 6 different T80 lights. And so those lights generate a little bit of heat too. And so I think that's been very helpful in getting these seeds up to temperature. I've been watering them twice a day. Be nice to do it more often, but I kind of want to trap the heat in here. So I've been watering them twice a day, and I really soak them through. I leave water standing down in the bottom. I don't know if you can see that, but I'll leave water standing down in the bottom just a little bit because when I open it up, these things are pretty dry. But I've been very happy, actually. We're about, let's see, I started these seeds last Sunday, and so we are 6 days, and we've got germination on them. And a lot of these were 7 to 10 day germination frames. So very happy with what we've gotten there. So yeah, that's the update on the seed starting station. Very happy with how it's been going so far. So that's about it for today. All the updates. I apologize that it took so long to make another video, but not much was happening. It was pretty cold for a while, and then it rained a whole lot after that. And so we didn't have a whole lot of opportunity to get out here and do much anything. Not much of an update to give on that anyways. But yeah, one last thing I did want to mention on that seed starting. They take quite a bit of quite a bit of water. So I've been using something called Coco Loco, and it's largely based on cocoa coir, and that dries out pretty quick. So it requires a lot more water than I thought it was going to. So you got to keep on top of it and make sure that you're giving it enough water. Otherwise, they dry out. And that's something I changed and started doing a little more of. And I noticed that the seeds seem to germinate a little quicker once I did that. Now maybe it was just because we were within the germination window days wise. But I did notice that as soon as I started putting more water on them, they did start to germinate. I did get some potting soil and fill up these spaces here. These are going to be largely used for herbs and flowers within these cinder blocks. But yeah, that's kind of it for today. I am going to try and make a little bit of a change to my plan for the garden, mostly because I just can't help myself, and I bought some more seeds. But I'm going to try and add some more flowers to it. Before it was going to be mostly herbs on the outside, but I'm going to try and put in some more flowers, marigolds, cosmos, something called a sunball, which is a crispidia, I believe. And then also I bought some squash and zucchini to try. Last year I had a bunch of squash bugs, even though I didn't grow any squash. But I noticed they were in the garden, and they were around our watermelons. Now, perhaps I misidentified them, but I looked up what it was, and it looked to be the same thing. So I don't know if we'll have any success with them, but I figured, hey, we like to eat squash, we like zucchini. Why not give it a shot? And so I bought some more of those seeds. And so we're going to incorporate that as well. I'm already going to make some trellises for our cucumbers to grow on, and so I might try and put those on trellises as well. And when I make those, I'll be sure to make a video on it. It's going to be an experiment for me, but what they'll be is actually made out of sunflower stalks that I saved from last year. And so I'm going to get that and use some twine and tie it together and then train the plants to grow that. And I did want to show, I mentioned last time, and I don't think I got great footage of it, but this collard is Alabama blue. And I don't know if you can see, but the veins have kind of a purple color to them. And so I just think that's really pretty. Most of what I've gotten here is Georgia green, but these Alabama blue I think are really pretty. Georgia green grow really well. That's probably what I'll buy if I buy any again. Ideally, I'd like to save seed from my own, those two that I've shown you, but I think just for genetic diversity's sake, I'll probably buy in some more next year from Southern Exposure. But that's it for today. Thank y'all for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the video. Sorry it's a little bit rambly, but I was trying to catch up from not making a video in a couple weeks. Hope to see you guys back next time. Thanks.